very big welcome to the Empower Her podcast. I am so excited to have Sneha Villalva here with us, who is a speechwriter, storyteller, author, and speaker with more than 2 decades of professional writing experience. But Sneha is married to her first and last husband and makes her home in Los Angeles, California, USA, with extra dark chocolate always on hand. A very big welcome to the Empower Her podcast. Now, Sneha's chapter is chapter 17 on page 17.7. So we seem to have a theme through this book. But the chapter's called Gentle Power. And that is exactly as you will find Sneha, a beautiful, powerful woman, but has this gentleness around her. A legacy lived is our chapter. Our daily words, actions, and intentions aren't just a mirror for us. They serve as a compass for others to follow. So I'm going to jump into reading just a couple of sentences here. I count myself as wealthy beyond measure because I was given a rich inheritance from a long line of strong women. Gifts of generosity, grit, and grace. And this is where I would love to start, Sneha, with your chapter from Empower Her. Tell us a little bit about those gifts you've been given.
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Catherine. It's great to chat with you and talk about Empower. This book has been such a great pleasure to be a part of. So I'm so excited. The gifts of generosity, grit, and grace. I think those are gifts that follow you for a lifetime. And those were gifts that were given to me by my foremothers. And I really believe that those are gifts that will follow me for a lifetime. My grand my great grandmother, my grandmother Mary, was so remarkable in her generosity. And I think I learned that from her because she was never tight-fisted. She was always open-handed. And that's something that's been a lesson for me. You know, our impulse is to hold on to things for ourselves, our selfish impulse, right? But she really modeled like have open hands and share with others. And she never turned anyone away. And I think that was a really beautiful model for me. And in
Yeah.
terms of grit, my mom is my model for that. She is a stage 4 breast cancer survivor and against all odds. And she just really plowed through that with so much grit, so much determination. And, you know, her body was ravaged, but her spirit was really strong. And it was amazing to witness, even as it was heartbreaking to see her go through that. And in terms of grace, my other grandmother really modeled that to me. You know, I hurt her in certain ways, even as a child, but she never held that over me. She always modeled kindness. So, you know, if I can model generosity, grit, and grace, I think I'll do really well in life.
Wow. And this lets us, the audience who are listening, to time to reflect and think about as well, what have the gifts, and sometimes we don't think that they're gifts,
Mhm.
to start with, but what are the gifts that have been passed down to us? And are we modeling those great gifts as well? So let's start at the beginning here. Anima,
Anima, uh-huh.
Anima, the gentle power of sacrifice. So let's share. This is from one of your great grandmas on your
Hmm.
paternal side. So tell us about her.
Yes, she died the year after I was born, so I never had the chance of actually meeting her. But our family is very good about telling stories and keeping the memories of our ancestors alive. And we have pictures of her in our house. It's one of my screensaver images is a picture of her, and she really, against all odds, really modeled sacrifice. Her and my great grandfather. Counter to what everybody wanted for them, became ministers. And because of that, they lost their income, they lost, you know, every way of surviving. But she always lived open-handedly as well and gave out of not abundance, but out of sacrifice. Like it's easy for us to give when we have a lot, right? Or when we have extra. But people would come to her door who didn't have anything to eat, and She would share whatever she had. And I think that was really powerful because she gave from a place of um, sacrifice, a place where she didn't have much, but what she had belonged to other people. And I think that was really powerful to have that story passed on to me and have that imprinted on me was whatever you have, be content with whatever you have, but whatever you have, live open-handed.
I just love that. Straight away I had that word Ubuntu come to mind, which everyone talks about now, which is that, communal sharing of,
Yeah.
gifts, thoughts, ideas, food, whatever we've got to share. So that's just beautiful. Thank you. And you've also made me think about letting my children know. I want to record the stories of their great grandparents that
Mhm.
they never met and the ones that I didn't meet, but what I do know about them. So, I think that's really nice to pass down.
Definitely.
And then we move into Mary, the gentle power of generosity, your
Hmm.
late paternal grandmother.
Hmm. Yeah, I bear her name actually. My middle name is Mary. So I always felt a strong kinship to her. And Um, she was not to be messed with. She was an inspectress of 102 schools in Hyderabad, India. And anything that comes to mind when you hear the word inspectress is true. She didn't miss a thing. She was very sharp, very eagle-eyed, always very much a disciplinarian. But she also was very generous. And she didn't believe in influence by domination. She believed in influence through flow, what I like to call flow. And it's a beautiful way of influencing people, right? Through your model, through your kindness, through your the way you live your life and how your example is shown. So she reminds me that our life is our biggest lesson for other people. And I think she really impacted me profoundly. She was the strict one out of all my relatives, but she was very kind. Everything came from a place of kindness. And we have, great stories with her. She taught me, I talk about her as generosity. Being from India, every crumb counted, right? And I remember I was 5 years old. She was staying with me and my mom, and after my sister was born, and I was a little bit of a picky eater, but she gave me, I don't know if you've had Kraft Singles cheese, the packaged plastic one. Well, even as a kid, I knew that that was not cheese, that was cheese product. But she gave it to me to eat, and I took a bite and I said, "Oh no, no, I can't do this." And I threw it in the trash. And she made me take it out and eat it, and I said, "Well, why don't we just send this to kids in India?" And she was like, "No, you're having it." And so she had this generous heart, right? Of like, we don't throw anything away, we give things. So she was a really tremendous model in that, even though I wasn't really thrilled with that experience.
Oh wow, so much to ask about that. And when you said that she was sharp, eagle-eyed, I think I see that in you.
Hmm.
You're
Thank
sharp, you see everything, and you have this gentleness, is the gentle power, the kindness as well. It was interesting because recently I was looking at the difference between, being nice and being
you.
kind. And it's
Hmm.
really interesting because it's very easy. You see some family members that are very nice out in the world,
Yes.
not
Yes.
so nice at home, but it's very easy to be nice to strangers, isn't it? Um,
Yes.
and even kind. And sometimes that kindness doesn't come into home. But I remember that song growing up, You've Got to Be Cruel to Be Kind. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because kindness um, can be can seem harsh at times to people, but by being kind is showing them what's possible as well.
Yeah, I think it comes down to speaking the truth in love, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think it's really powerful.
definitely speaking the truth in love. And and so for other people, sometimes that may not seem nice, but
Hmm.
because there's so much love in there behind it. That's the kindness. And just being nice, um, you know, doesn't cut it. We've got to be kind. So that's beautiful. Wow. And so anything else that you'd like us to know about Mary? And it's great when people can start to think of their parents and luckily, and their grandparents and their great grandparents. Luckily, your stories have been transferred down and people can see who they are within them.
Hmm. Yeah, she was. So I got married late in life, according to Indian standards. I got married at 43, which she didn't live to see my marriage, but she prayed for it since I was a kid every day. And whenever my dad saw her, since I was like 17 years old, she'd be like, "So is anything going on for Sneha right now?" So she just had that deep love, right, and care and wanting to see me settle down and be happy. And I wish she could meet Erwin, my husband, because she would be thrilled. Um, but she was a woman of prayer, and those prayers paid off because I got the best at the end of all of it. And so she really was devoted, and it just demonstrated the depth of her care that even thousands of miles away, where we didn't get to see each other very often because that's the story, right, of immigrants, children and grandchildren. So we were separated by many miles, but we were connected too because she would always pray for me, and her prayers turned out to be really effective. So yeah, no one was more concerned about my marital state than her. So I'm really grateful she was because it turned out well.
That end up putting extra pressure on you, do you feel, um, for that? Or was it the fact that you just knew someone in the background was praying and someone one day, the right person would come along? And one more question, it felt like it didn't happen until she went, so she took over and found him for you.
From her, it didn't feel like pressure because it was prayer, right?
Right.
I mean, she would ask, but she wouldn't pester me. She
Mm.
just would pray. And I think that's a good lesson, right? Like not to let our anxieties rule, but to come from a place of peace and groundedness. So there's pressure from many other quarters, but hers was a position of prayer. So I think that was a powerful lesson in and of itself, right? Is don't live out of anxiety, live out of a place of peace and turning things over to something greater rather than trying to control it yourself. So, but yeah, she would have been pleased with the outcome for sure.
Do you think she had anything to do with the outcome?
Those prayers sure did. Yeah.
Uh, oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so what was her name again? Mary.
Mary.
And your
Yeah.
middle name's Mary. It's like
Yeah.
my mum's name was Helen and my middle name's Helen and my daughter's middle name is Helen.
Oh, I love it.
But unfortunately, my daughter never got to meet my mum, and my mum went past when I was 16. So it may be the end of the line for the middle name, um,
Mm-hmm.
as the kids move in. But
Mm-hmm.
let's see. So Lally, the gentle power of perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
My mother Lally taught me another kind of subversive leadership. She played her power through her example of sheer grit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned about her before, but let's jump in a little bit more.
Yes, I think we think of leadership as position or title, but I don't believe that's really what leadership is. I believe leadership is, again, how we lead our lives, and that how we lead our lives is a living lesson, and that lesson can actually turn tables, right? And how we make our choices, how we assess things, how we face challenges, all of those things are lessons, and it's a model, right, for children. Mothers actually have uh, cells of their children in their brains, right? Even long after they've delivered their child. Like there's this imprint that you can't get away from. And I think that that informs their leadership, right? Coming, if you're blessed to have a kind and loving mother, that really informs the way they treat you, that informs the way they shape you and mold you. And I really think motherhood is the ultimate kind of subversive leadership, that you're forming minds, you're forming hearts, and you're launching them into the world, and it's so significant.
I love that. We're launching them into the world as we do. So, mums are amazing. And we talk about positional leaders. And unfortunately, most of the positions, like especially in Australia, uh, are positional leadership. They're not influential. They don't have the emotional intelligence to back up what they're saying. At the moment, we've got a grinning Cheshire cat um,
Mm,
leading us, but doing the opposite behind closed doors, and it's very, very difficult.
mm,
And the fact is that most of our companies, most of our businesses are run by positional leaders, people that have fallen into that position or have been chosen by
mm,
a small number of people to lead, whether they end up liking them or not.
mm,
And there's a massive difference. And so we have the opportunities to choose our leaders around
mm,
us, to choose the people that we want to model.
mm,
And I also think that those bad leaders show us what not to do. And
absolutely.
so I think that's really important. And some people grow up in very hard circumstances with parents that aren't emotionally intelligent, that they
Mm,
haven't felt that love for. And then they have two choices. They can emulate that exact same thing through their family, or they can go, that was so bad, I will never do that. And,
yes.
you see it play out
Hmm.
both ways, unfortunately. And I think it's a really important thing to be able to reflect and go, that wasn't good. I'm not going to do that. And I think that's when we look at all the authors in Empower Her, that's exactly what's happened.
Mm,
There's been crises that have made the change, that have made us feel more empowered to do the right thing, to help the next person so someone doesn't go through what we had to. But let's face it, we know everyone has to go through their lessons. And talking about lessons, we've got thank Emma, the gentle power of restraint. Let us know a
yeah.
little bit about your mother's mother.
Yes, she was tiny but mighty. She was a force to be reckoned with, but very kind to me, very kind to me. So I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian environment, and as a child of an immigrant, there was a lot of rub because of that. And you feel your difference, you feel your lack of belonging. And she, unfortunately, in my childhood view, she represented my difference and my unbelonging. And because of that, I distanced myself from her. And she always responded with kindness. She didn't condemn me. She didn't scold me. I think she understood. She had this deep understanding of the context I was in and the consequences I was facing. And I really think she had clarity. So she really was a beautiful human being who would defend me to my mother when I got in trouble, and just was a lovely woman. She had a great laugh. Her whole body would shake when she laughed. It was just adorable, and she was great. She also a woman of prayer, like my other grandmother, very dedicated and very faithful, and a lot of fun too. She just really enjoyed a good laugh, and I miss her. I miss her.
And actually brought tears to my eyes thinking about you as that child, in that environment as well.
Mhm.
When you do feel so different to everyone else. And yet today, I'm sure you don't feel that. Would that be right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm married to an Ecuadorian American. I live in a Chinese neighborhood. I think it's great right now. I'm really comfortable with where I'm at. So,
Where you're at and who you are.
yeah.
I'm just going to read a little bit from here. I would run ahead of her on my way back from school instead of walking alongside her, keeping that distance that I thought would hide our kinship. Never mind that I was the only Indian at that time at Deer Canyon Elementary School.
Hmm.
And so you can see that, you can see that. But she never said a word. She was unfailingly gentle towards me. Leading with restraint rather than rebuke requires an unusual depth of clarity about context and consequence. And I've worked a lot in India, I love
Mhm.
India. We support the Bombay Mothers and Children's Hospital as well. And this is interesting because rebuke is usually a big thing that the Indians like to do, right, with the
Yes.
families,
Very
especially the
true.
matriarchs. Um, so, wow, she must have been very, very, very incredible. She modeled power through grace. She knew who she was and knew who I was. Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I can imagine you looking back, you had that little bit of sadness or hurt that, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But as a
Yeah.
little child, like you can see why that child did that.
Yeah, you have to look back with understanding. But yeah, there's definitely regret. Like, why wasn't I that a kinder kid? Like that just would have been, it was such a treasure, right? To have your
Yeah.
grandmother stay with you for 6 months, and just to have that frame of mind as a child, you have to forgive yourself. But yeah, I
Yes.
mean, she clearly forgave me. So that's a beautiful lesson to take away from that.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that we have, without knowing it, even that ego so much back then, don't we? Like you don't
Mhm.
think of a child with ego, but there was that sense of, oh my gosh, they'll think this about me, they'll think that about me,
Right.
which really comes from that egotistical mind. Um,
Mhm.
Interesting. And for those listening, what did you do as a child, perhaps because you were trying to protect yourself from people thinking, oh, if I'm with that person or if my mother picks me up. I remember I'd grab my children, my boys, they'd be getting out the car and I'd hug them and give them a kiss in front of all their mates and the thumbs up, and then it just became a bit of a joke. Um, with their friends too, I'd give them a hug as well. The gentle power of purpose.
Mhm.
So we're heading towards our end here. Let us
Mhm.
know a little bit about that general power of purpose.
Yes, purpose is so critical because otherwise we're wandering around aimlessly, right? And I know when I was a kid, we used to get into our big Plymouth van and just drive around the neighborhood at night looking at houses. And it seemed really aimless, but the purpose was to connect and to spend time together as a family. And so, whatever we do, if it's undergirded with purpose and intention, I think we live more focused, meaningful lives. And for Gen Z, purpose is more important than a paycheck. And I think that says a lot about the generation, that perhaps it's a reaction to a previous generation that maybe wasn't as grounded in purpose. So I think there's something beautiful that comes out of that, right? When we are focused on our why and focused on our intention and focused on where we want to go and who we want to be. Like I think that's a really beautiful way to live, a very integrated place to live. And if we're not purpose driven, we're driven by everything else, and we don't have a sense of self, really.
Well, talking about purpose, I'd love to read this little bit from your book here. I recently read that in a race between a lion and a deer, many times the deer wins because the lion runs for food and the deer runs for life.
Hmm.
Purpose is far more important than need. 74% of Gen Z workers rank purpose at work as more important than a paycheck. Purpose is our fuel, powering us through our best and worst days, carrying us through lonely and dark nights. It is what Simon Sinek calls our why.
Hmm.
So there you go. So the lion's purpose is to run for food, but
Yeah.
the deer is running for its life. So you can see that difference there. And I guess this is going to lead us into our dice throw as we wrap up here. Sneha, before we do, is there anything else that you would love to add for the listeners today?
I would just say embrace your gentle power. We're told that we need to be bombastic, that we need to be loud, that we need to be um, aggressive, right? But I think there's a beauty in restraint. I think there's a beauty in dignity. And I think there's a beauty in using our words kindly and intentionally. And I think that's what this world needs right now in terms of their leaders, or more gentle power. It's not soft. It's not soft leadership. It's it's intensely powerful, right? Because it requires self-control and it requires a hold on yourself, a ownership of your values, all of those things. So I'd really say just lean into your gentle power because I think we all have it and we must practice it.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a little bit like as you were speaking, I got that visual of the line drawn in the sand.
Mm,
I think that gentle power, the power comes from knowing and living
mhm.
above that line and knowing what is acceptable and being
Yes,
gentle with those under, but it's not acceptable.
right.
With you, you know that power and how to gently bring them to that level that is expected where you are,
Hmm.
or to walk away.
Yeah.
So I have a dice throw coming up. Here we go. What number have you got?
3.
Three. The fear factor.
Ooh.
Interesting one for you. The fear factor. What still scares you a little, even today? Like even now at the present.
Are you looking for something really deep or something that immediately comes to mind?
You can do two if you like.
Okay.
We're
Well,
open ears here.
well, the first thing that comes to mind is I have recurring nightmares about snakes. So that is like my recurring fear for sure. So that was the first thing that popped into my mind is please don't get me around one of those. In terms of something else that I fear, I think I fear disappointing others, right? There's that sense of like you want to make people proud, you want to make people pleased and happy, but we also have to realize that we live the best we can and we live tied to our values. And then when we do that, we don't have anything to be ashamed of, right? If we're true to the things we believe. So I think that's my fear, but I'm countering it every day.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing because it opens us up. It's a little bit raw, it's very personal. And I'm sure that a lot of listeners can actually relate to that. And when it comes to snakes, I was actually left here in Australia from a mum from a different country, and then I was adopted a couple of months after. And when we finally got to speak, her first words were, "I am so sorry to have left you in a country full of snakes and spiders." So, Sneha, you may not want to come to retreat in Australia, but New Zealand's pretty safe, just to let you know.
Thanks for the heads up.
And so we'll look at ending our podcast here today. And just the last lines from your chapter: leaders aren't born, they are led. And they are led through our generations. So thank you, everyone, for listening into this amazing podcast with Sneha today from an author from my book, Empower Her. Until next time, keep empowering yourself.